So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session on cybersecurity. We've got Darren Roberts from Microsoft here to take us through it. It's Microsoft Day here at the festival. Darren is the second Microsoft person today. We've got one more, I think, running today. So good to see them all. So a few things to note. We've actually started recording the session. It'll be available for anyone to watch after the festival's all finished. I have muted you all now. If I can ask you all to turn off your cameras, which I think you have anyway, so that's great. As we go through, if you've got any questions, we'll save them to the end. So if you could drop them into the chat session. If you've not used Teams before, you can find chat at the top bar. You can see a raised hand, and to the left there's a show conversation speech bubble. If you click on that, you can leave anything you like in there. If you feel the need to tweet, then we're using the hashtag Futurefest today. There's lots of stuff in there to catch up on later as well. I don't think I have anything more to say, so I'm going to shut up and I'm going to hand over to Mark. Mark, thanks very much.
Hand over to Darren. Even.
I think we'll hand over to Darren next instead. That's a much better idea.
And also, Darren suddenly changed his job as well. He doesn't work for Microsoft anymore, works for Swap Internal Audit Services. Very, very quickly about Swap, we are the internal audit providers for Dorset Council. We also provide internal audit services for other local authorities, initially across the southwest, and now we're just national. We're all over the place. You'll find us up in Hull, in Mid Wales, etc., etc. And our moniker is we're about assuring, improving, and protecting. And we're demystifying and changing the way that people look at cybersecurity. For us, cybersecurity now is for everyone. It isn't just about your techies, it isn't just about your hackers. And what we're going to do today is we're going to kind of challenge some of that, really. So we're looking at the objective for today's gig. So establish, first of all, why we should all take security seriously, not just now, but also in the future. That's really, really important as we start to find ourselves moving along in this fourth industrial revolution. But I think for ourselves, we've got to understand, why do they do it? Why do people want to attack us in that cyber environment? And what you can do better to stop yourself actually being a victim. And here's some of the scary stuff. You can actually reduce these risks without using any ICT, because these guys know that the ICT is probably just a little bit too good for them. And here's something that I want to nail down as well. Can we have a better word for cyber? When we think of cybersecurity, we think of computers and techies and nerds, etc., etc. But as far as I'm concerned, this is for all of us. It's about demystification, and it's about that mindset. Now, let's just use security as a mindset. How many of us walked out of our doors this morning and didn't check our front doors were locked? How many people, like for me, if you drove to work, made sure that your car was locked beforehand, before you actually left it? That's all to do with our mindset. I'm not thinking anything special about whether I'm personally secure. It's just something that we do every day. And really, that's something that we should be doing as cybersecurity. So we make cybersecurity security by design as we go through. And why is it important? Because when we're talking going forward, and Festival of the Future and digital, these are all the stuff that we need to start protecting ourselves against. Now, these areas aren't just 10 areas I've just made up. So as well as being part of the SWAP, I also sit on the Committee for Information and Risk at the British Computer Society. So we've done some research recently, and we've come up with these 10 areas that we feel people need to gain extra assurance and manage risk on going forward. Now, a lot of these things are sometimes there's things that we haven't even thought about yet. But really, we need to start thinking about how we're going to mitigate against risk, because at the end of the day, the bad guys are one step ahead of us on this. And as these things are being defined, the bad guys are thinking around the ways that they could end up ripping us off and making you be the victim of that cyber attack. Because this is what happens if you don't get the design right. And I'm harking back here to my old days as a business analyst. Blimmin' hell, the amount of times I have used this picture. This must be about 10 years old, but it still stands firm. What's happened is that no controls have been put over the piece of grass on the left-hand side, and members of the public are using that as a workaround. Now, you may think that's quite superficial. So what? Someone's just walking across the corner. But try and put yourself now with regards to your own personal circumstances. Or if you're here today as a local authority or as a business, try and put that mindset now into the damage, say, for instance, that's caused that piece of grass. So what kind of damage would that sort of cause to your business? What sort of damage would that cause to your reputation? And now start look at that picture and start thinking, well, now what have we got to do to end up putting that right? Some people just say, well, you just relay the turf, but then you've got the tree on the right-hand side. There could be all sorts of damage that's been done to that and all sorts of stuff that you need to go ahead and mitigate it, simply because the design wasn't there in the first place. Also, at the end of the day, no one wants to be the victim. I've used these examples of councils because that's basically what SWAP's bread and butter is. We go out there and we provide assurance services for councils. And actually, couldn't have this happened at a best, or dare I say, at a worst time? Just 2 days ago, Hackney Council hit by a serious cyber attack. It's completely and utterly taken them out. It's rumoured that it's a ransomware attack, which is really one of the most popular attacks that you're going to find yourself up against if you're an organisation. So we've used other examples there. Copeland and Redcar took absolutely months to restore their business continuity. They were running on pen and paper for absolute months. But it isn't just about the ransomware. There's poor old Wiltshire Council sat there delivering great services to their citizens, unaware that they had a Russian spy living in Salisbury, and actually the nation state wanted to kind of knock him out. The only reason they know about that is when they were actually hit by the Novichok attack. And from that, Wiltshire Council then had to supply all sorts of emergency services and support, which makes them suddenly the victim of a nation state attack. So at the end of the day, how do we make sure that we don't become a victim of that going forward? Because here's some of the stuff that you could end up becoming the consequence of. I'm not going to go on too much about the first one. I think we're all aware of the risks with regards to the ICO and the financial penalties that could come out. But the second one is becoming really, really important. And it's a case study we've recently done in the BCS. And it was just a garage owner. It was a guy who owned a little garage. He did MOTs and brake repairs out of a railway arch in South London. He actually started using a digital solution to log customers' cases so they could book, but he was breached and the customer data actually got stolen. He reported in the first month of his trading after that, his trade dropped by 70% because people reputationally said that as far as they were concerned, they didn't trust him with his data. And it took him months to end up getting those customers back. So it isn't just financial, but actually the indirect reputational side as well. And don't think you're sat there and you haven't yet been a victim, because you have. You've either been breached or you're going to get breached. If you want to go and check it out whether you have been breached, enter your email address into that website, Have I Been Pwned? And we'll have a look in a moment with regards to what happened when I entered my own email address in there. At the end of the day, the human factor is that weakest link. Because at the end of the day, guys, the software is too good. You can't just rely on that software to protect you. And we'll have a look in a moment with regards to the techniques that the bad guys are going to use, because they know that they're not going to penetrate that software. But one thing that we don't want to do is we don't want to promote a culture of fear. We want to promote that culture of compliance. So see your daily approach to cybersecurity, as I said earlier, exactly the same as you've checked your front door or you've checked that your car is locked. And have I been pwned? Do you know what I have? Even the ICT Auditor gets pwned. So this is actually one of my Hotmail accounts. I've entered it in, and sure enough, I've been a victim on that Hotmail account of 2 breaches. Now, the first one is actually me just being sloppy. So Canva is a web-based application that you use when you don't want to reach into your wallet and pay for Visio. So that's what I did. I actually didn't like Canva very much and I stopped using it. But of course, what I didn't do was cancel my subscription to them. So therefore, my data stays with them. They were actually subject to a breach in May 2019, and out goes my data with it. On my spam botter, so I was a victim of that at some point. But as you can say, what can I do to prevent this? 711 million unique email addresses from there. So this goes to show that at the end of the day, don't think you haven't been breached, because at some point you have been, or it's highly likely in the future that you're going to be. as an auditor, I want to understand the root cause. Okay, so what I want to know is why are they going ahead and doing it? Well, it's on the basis of three outcomes. It's either going to be monetary, it's going to be malicious, or it's going to be accidental. Now, let's just talk about those top two first of all. That would be the ones that we would probably associate with a cyber attack or a hack. So they want to take your data to sell it on, they would want to scam you in some way, or they would want to kidnap and ransom your data, commonly known as ransomware. The one that we sometimes overlook is the one on the right-hand side, and that is the malicious outcome, where there would be, say, for instance, a movement or a political group that could seek major disruption. It could be as a result of a leak or a whistleblow. I think everyone's familiar with the famous whistleblower Edward Snowden, and some people think Snowden's a hero. Some people think that he should be castigated for what he did. At the end of the day, though, he was the one that whistleblew that data. But the one that's the interesting one, the one that people I think still associate with the hacks, are the guerrilla reasoners. So that's the ones that can hack your system because they can. A good example of a guerrilla reasoner would be someone that would take your website down, and then they'd send you a very helpful email afterwards saying, we took your website down because you've got the following vulnerabilities with it. And they actually just think they're being very, very helpful. But actually, it's thrown your website down for 3 days, and it's transactionally been an absolute disaster. So those are the two outcomes that you need to consider with people which, as far as we're concerned, have no responsibility, no remorse, and no morals whatsoever. Okay, they have a specific malicious outcome to that. But underneath that, you've got your third outcome from the people who work for you and for you personally, so that you yourself could be the victim of a data breach, or even worse, be the enabler for a cyber attack. So let's take out one of the myths first of all. Why is it every time we talk about cyber attacks and cyber criminals, there's that picture in the middle? We seem to think it's some person sat in a dark room with an anonymous mask on with a hoodie on. Do you know what? The people behind these attacks are probably more likely to be the people on the right-hand side. Actually, do you know what? Just people like you and me, yeah? They have got specific business models to roll this stuff out. They're highly skilled, they're highly sophisticated. They make sure they get the best people in to do the job. They have specific product sets, so they will offer out malware, they'll offer out ransomwares. They want to go in and leave very little trace, and they're very, very hard to catch. But what's their objective? Their objective is, like any of us are in business, their objective is to maximize income, but they're just doing it, as I said earlier, with the no responsibility, no morals, and no regret at all. And these are the sorts of people that we're trying to mitigate against. The thing is, they're usually one step ahead of us. Auditors, we like to be that 2 steps ahead. How do they do that? Because like us, they're thoroughly aware of this, the cybersecurity awareness ecosystem. So for us to maintain good cyber health, it's important that we consider the elements of people, process, and technology. Unfortunately today, I've only got 30 minutes. Now, if I wanted to talk about process and technology with you today, I'd probably be here for 3 hours. So what we're going to be talking about today are the specific people risks, what you can do personally to maintain good cyber health and help you mitigate the bad guys, because you're not going to beat them. Remember what I said earlier, at some point you are going to be a victim. So here's my playlist for the gig today then. So number 1 then, that weakest link. The weakest link that will let attackers in rather than breaking in. They can use elements such as social engineering. And here we start coming up with new words that suddenly appear in the Oxford Dictionary. Phishing, spoofing, what do they mean? And for us as cyber auditors, we're quickly becoming experts in human psychology. We've probably all seen the advert that's come out from the government this week about Fatima. Personally, if Fatima does want to get into cyber, I would suggest she gets into human psychology. And actually, here's a little plug for a book as well. The book's called Confident Cybersecurity. It's by Dr. Jessica Parker. And what Jess does in that book is she very much concentrates on the psychology of cyber. The book itself is about 300 pages long, but within that book, about 3 pages are dedicated to technology. The rest of it is all about people and psychology. And that is what the bad guys are doing to actually attack you and to actually mitigate and actually carry out a cyber attack. And to do that, they also mitigate against 4 types of user behavior. So let's go through each one of these. First of all, it's just too hard for them to break in. I mean, here we have a picture of my villa in Ibiza. Now, in my villa here, there's some really valuable records and people get their hands on them. But here's the problem. As you can see, across my fence here, I put up some spikes on the bricks. I put up some barbed wire there as well. What you can't see in here is the 2 Fila Brasileira dogs that I've got hanging around, and the picture of my security guard's not in here because, well, frankly, he's just not good looking enough, so he's not included in here. So if someone wanted to break in there, that's going to be a real hassle, isn't it? Remember what I said earlier? They want to leave no trace. They want to get in and make sure that they don't get caught. That's going to be a real hassle to get in. Now think about that with regards to your network security or the security on your device. If that is loaded up with antivirus, anti-malware, intrusion prevention, there's no point trying to hack into that. You're going to get caught and you're not actually going to seek your objective with regards to taking my records away from me. So how are you going to do it? Well, either I need to give it away to them or the vampire's at the door and I go ahead and physically let them in without realizing it. And that's where they use social engineering. So they very much attack the ethics and morals that I would suppose we all have as decent people. They pick on our fears, not wanting to question people. We always have a desire to help. We generally have respect. It's quite naive. And the best one of all, the really British one, we don't want to be a nuisance. What happens is, we happen on the top left, is suddenly when we realize we're a victim of it, we suddenly realise, oh my God, what have we just done? The other issue is with regards to the bottom right. And these are very much traits, morals that are very much recognised down by the older generation. So it'd be very hard for them to actually challenge some of these elements that we've got here. So let's turn some of these on the head then. So if someone goes to you, say, for instance, for help or offers you something, you immediately not trust them, or you disrespect them, or you decide not to help them, or you want to question them. So that's the sort of thing that the cyber attackers know that you're more likely not to do. But actually, if you're going to be mitigating against them, that's something that you've got to do. It's a really fine line. So the other thing that they look at is something called social proof. So if we don't know how to behave, we'll mimic the others, just like the sheep up there. So you may be well aware of something, but you still behave in a certain way. So there you are, driving along in your car, and you're driving on a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. And it's a big straight road at the end. All the houses have disappeared and you've got fields either side, but you're still in the 30-mile-an-hour limit. But just on the edge of the crest of the hill, you see the national speed limit sign. The person in front of you speeds up. You speed up, you look behind, and they speed up as well. It's okay. We're all doing it, so we all hit 40 or 50 by the time we hit the national speed limit. It's fine because we're all doing it. Social proof. Actually, all 3 of you are breaking the law. And actually, if you're involved in an accident, you get in trouble for it. But that's the way that we naturally act with regards to social proof. And again, that's something psychologically that cyber attackers would look to exploit down from you. Now, the next one is user behaviours. See if you can find yourself in any one of these 4. In fact, I hope you won't be the last one. So once again, this is well written down. And these are specific theories over the user behaviours that people actually exhibit if we're going to undertake a cyber attack on them. So first of all then, little Miss Keen, she's very keen to impress. She's a very hard worker, but her general security awareness isn't good. She has been offered the training and she has done it, but she didn't really understand it. The other thing with little Miss Keen is when she tends to be a victim of a cyber attack, it's devastating for her. Gets very, very upset, and obviously as a result of that, she feels that she's done something wrong. Mr. Tired's an interesting one. Now, Mr. Tired has really come to the fore really since the pandemic with people working from home. So really, at the end of the day, they've got too much going on. What they've got there is that security is slowing them down, and they've just got no time to do anything. And people are getting fatigued. They're operating in an environment that isn't familiar to them, and very much ends up making them a victim. We actually do a completely separate session on cybersecurity for home workers, and it's something that we have to come up with post-pandemic, because it's something we hadn't really considered before, looking at some of the behaviours that have happened from people that have been unexpectedly working from home for up to 6 months now. Mr. Careless is an interesting one. So it's a bit like your guy on the road just now. So he drives along in 30-mile-an-hour speed limits, but he drives at 40 and 50 all the time. He never really gets caught. So at the end of the day, they know what they're supposed to do. They know the risks, but they still go ahead and act in the way they do. Very much on the cyber side, they'll use workarounds and alternative apps. We actually came across one very, very recently where someone wanted to do an export from Teams into SharePoint. It wouldn't allow them to do it, but they found an app on the App Store that allowed them to do it. The thing is there, what's that app doing with that data? What's it doing with regards to the integration between those two systems? But of course, what they're doing there is they're cutting corners. And finally, I hope no one's this, and that's Little Miss Sneaky. So from the outset, Little Miss Sneaky has malicious intent. They want to go ahead and take data for personal gain. And it could be, however, that they're a disgruntled employee, or they feel that they've been misjusticed in some way. Little Miss Sneaky could be doing it during a period where she handed a notice in, etc., etc. So these are the 4 characteristics that could be targeted with regards to cyber attacks, and there's 4 different ways we can do that. Now, I've only got half an hour today. It'd be great to have talked with those a little bit more detail. So, but from the outset, can you think that you could possibly fit into one of those? I hope none of you are the sneaky side of it. Social engineering is dead easy, and I will show you now in this short video how easy it is to go ahead and do.
We're talking about cybersecurity.
Not sure the sound's coming through on that, Darren.
Sorry, Neil?
Not getting the sound through, and we just had a comment from one of our attendees that there's no sound. I think it might be a connection issue more than a configuration.
Okay. Right, that's right. We'll just move on. Okay, so with regards to social engineering then, so it's just a case of having to protect yourself online. Just be aware of what you go ahead and share online. If you're members of groups, social media, just consider whether it's appropriate to be public or private on there. Who do you share your data with? Now, something that I do is I frequently go into my social media and refresh my friends lists. So did you, Faye, for instance, go on that holiday to Cos 6 years ago with Gary and Mary, and you friended them on Facebook? But actually, since then, you've actually no interaction with them at all. How do you know that Gary and Mary's Facebook accounts haven't been hacked? And actually someone spoofed them and someone's using them? They've got all the access to your data going forward. So just be careful on who you go ahead and share with. Is any of what you post actually linked to your passwords? So is it linked, say, for instance, with the names of your kids, names of your dogs, where you live, etc., etc.? And here's actually a lesson from me. Look at that from earlier. Perhaps I should have unsubscribed from that Canva list, and I may not have been a victim of the hack there. Manage your social media connections going forward. So as I said, if it's people you don't interact with, or you look at it and you think, well, last time I spoke to them was 7 years, let them go, okay? There's no Facebook police, there's no Snapchat police. People aren't going to be unhappy with you if you go ahead and, if you haven't spoken to them for 7 years, they're really not going to care. Here's a little exercise to do. Google yourself. See what information comes up about yourself. From there, if I can Google you and find out information about you, then I can undertake a social engineering attack on you quite easily. Also, if you're in any doubt, then question it. Sometimes stuff really is too good to be true. And also be careful what you do in public as well. So overheard conversations on the phone, payment methods. If demo with you live, I'll show you exactly how one of our chief executives got his credit card details stolen. It happened in the blink of an eye. It's just something like that you've just got to be aware of. So always make sure that your card stays within you. And watch also for things such as the evil twin or unsecure public Wi-Fi. I'll give a demonstration of that one in a moment. In the meantime, though, watch out for the secrets held on your own devices. So what does your phone and its installed apps know about you? Now, many of the applications and utilities on phones are actually switched on by default, mainly because they're needed to integrate with the various apps that are on those devices. However, they're quite intricate, and I know because I've gone through my own Android device, and I've unset a lot of them. Would you believe it took me nearly 2 hours to do? Now, of course, the phone manufacturers and the app providers don't really want you to do that. But here's some of the things that they'll end up storing about you. So location, sometimes these things can be quite precise. There's something at the back of photos called exin data, EXIN, and the exin data can provide quite granular details with regards to location, the details of the settings of the phone, etc., and all of that will be stored in the file when you go ahead and share that photo. It includes your personal preferences, what you like posting and sharing, internet browsing histories, and more importantly, of course, for apps, the data aggregation, including the date and location stamps, which of course some apps will actually require that kind of post-population between them to go ahead and work effectively. So when you're on the move, then use public Wi-Fi with caution. So if you come across a wireless hotspot and it's in public, don't transmit personal data. Never use usernames, passwords, pay online, and also check their terms and conditions, whether they are actually secure or not. Some of them may give the indication that they're secure. Hotels are ones for this, and the actual Wi-Fi itself is actually unsecured, and they've got the audacity to charge you for it as well. If in any doubt, then do not connect, and watch out for the Wi-Fi connection scam, the evil twin. So you're there at the hotel and you're presented with these two wireless access points. You've got hotel Wi-Fi secure and hotel free super fast premium. The evil twin is actually the second one. And what that is that is a hotspot that has been set up maliciously, so you actually run all your traffic through it. But what they've done is they've set up the hotspot quite cleverly, so it looks very similar to your local hotspot that's been provided by your hotel. But of course, they've used enticing words like free, super fast, and premium. Actually, what happens is that everything that you do through that Wi-Fi ends up going through them, and they're scraping everything that comes through there, including usernames, passwords, etc. For us, if you're going to be secure on the move, it's up for there's two solutions really. Use 4G, or as we're moving on to 5G as well. It's an encrypted connection. Although I appreciate that across the UK, 4 and 5G coverage isn't that brilliant. Or secondly, use a VPN, virtual private network. So a secure tunnel between yourself and the people which you're connecting to. However, we've got a completely separate session that we do on who do you trust with regards to your VPN provider. But that's for another day. Spoofing. You probably had a few messages from people on social media before saying, don't accept Facebook requests from me because I've been hacked. Actually, hacking a Facebook account is pretty difficult. What's more than likely is that they've been spoofed. Now, as an IT auditor, I think I could safely say that I could probably spoof someone's social media presence in about 20 minutes flat. It's not too difficult to do. But here's the thing, how can you be spoofed? So what I've done here is I've come up with a spoof email, and this is from our own chief executive, and this looks pretty convincing actually. Now, there's lots of elements that we have to come into to make this look as convincing as possible. Now, as you can see on the top left-hand side, we've got the profile picture. The address says that it comes from our chief exec. It's actually got his signature there and everything. So on the face of it, it's actually quite convincing. It is in fact a spoof, and I have used it to undertake what's called a phish. And here's some of the clues around this. So first of all then, how do we know that this is Dave? Because of course, Outlook's very helpful. All it will do is give you the name of the person. It won't necessarily give you the name of the it's come from. That's something called the SMTP address, something that you've got to look at underneath of this. And a few things what I said earlier, if you're unsure about it, question it. Why is he attaching files? Why is he question the motive? Why is he sending this sort of stuff out? Also, please note that some of the stuff in here with regards to the wording is trying to push you off that this isn't a phish, because it's saying that about the portal, but don't log into it. So what it's saying there is that honestly, Gov, this ain't a phish because I'm not giving you a link, because that gives a big indication that normally is a phishing link. So what's happened here is that a malicious file has actually been attached, that actually when that is open, that opens up the payload for the malicious attack. So it's things like this you've really got to be on your feet for. And this has happened to me as well. I was the victim of a phish earlier this year, and it was from EasyJet. I'm a frequent flyer with EasyJet. You may be aware that EasyJet were subject to quite a big cyber attack just before the pandemic. And sure enough, during the pandemic, about May or June, I received, which was a very convincing phish. They even used my own name as well, with regards to getting extra money back on the basis of a cancelled flight. The only thing that I realised that it was a phish was because the email address, the domain wasn't quite correct. So they actually used easyjet.com.com. You looked at my previous emails and they only came from easyjet.com. So I knew straight away that that was a phish. They're becoming more and more sophisticated, folks. So you've really got to be on, I said, on your feet on these, because when we end up planning white hat attacks, and we do these as part of audits as well, they are well planned and designed. Yeah. At the end of the day, they've got all the time in the world. They're cyber criminals. Yeah. So they're not on any duty to go ahead and do things within time. They must execute well, because they could be sold on. They could be part of that market going forward as part of that cyber business model. And we will use techniques for publicly available information. As I said earlier, Google yourself. That email that I've done there from Dave was a picture of him that is actually on our own website. It just so happens it's the same picture he uses for his Outlook as well. So for us, that underlined the authenticity of his email going forward. And this is sort of services that we do offer as well. So we do undertake white hat services. So hopefully you don't end up being the victim. It's a pity about the sound, folks, because I did have an example here of social engineering. And what actually happened here is this girl ended up using social engineering to gain access to the guy's mobile phone account. She got herself added to the account. And she changed his password as well. So if you want, I will send you the link to that one on YouTube. It's really worth watching. The only thing I would say is watch out. The guy uses some bad language at the end of it, because obviously he's less than impressed that what's happened here. But the really interesting thing about Jess on this one is that she's planned this really, really well. She's planned the attack. It isn't just something that she's done on the fly. And it's quite easy that you could be a victim of this. And she's using very little technology. It's all about the user psychology. So where do we go from here? So it's about promoting that, not promoting the culture of fear, but promoting the culture of compliance. Remember what I said earlier, don't rely on the technology. This was stuff that came out of InfoSec. It was actually last year, because it was the first live show they did. And then these were their conclusions. And that's on technology, but very low on new solutions. Fundamental risks aren't being addressed. Well, because of the psychology side of it, the technology can't deal with that. So the payloads of the cybercrime are getting more sophisticated, but the technology to initiate them is not. And I remember when I went to lunch from InfoSec, I was walking behind two of the vendors and they were talking between themselves. We've got to be careful, you see, about talking on the street. Auditors are always listening. And one of them said to the other one, he goes, do you know what? He goes, it's like selling sweets to a baby. This is 2019. He goes, we're still selling the same technology that we were selling here back in 2017. That's because there's no need for the technology to move on. It's already that good, and the cyber criminals are concentrating on that human psychology side. So it must start, therefore, with people and process. There's got to be more positive cyber and digital attitudes. And for us, if you're an organisation, a champions network really works well. So promoting that two-way approach and feeding on the gaps. Whatever you do, folks, don't make this the problem of your IT manager, yeah? It's got to be a culture of compliance, and that's got to happen on induction as well. And be realistic with people, yeah? Don't overwhelm them. Prioritise, go ahead on what you actually want to achieve. All of this, incidentally, is available on something called the Security Champions Playbook on OWASP. Go and do a little Google. As your auditor, I would say go and use DuckDuckGo. Separate presentation. So go ahead and have a look at some of that with regards to setting up your own champions network. And that involves more stakeholders rather than just IT, and it gets the people who actually end up working on the ground. So Neil, how am I doing for time?
You're a little over, I'm afraid, Darren, but we still have everyone with us.
Last two slides. So first of all then, in conclusion then, be aware what you've put out there. Please folks, employ security by default, yeah? Think of it like your front door on your car, and don't rely on the apps and the softwares to protect you, because here at the end of the day, as your auditors, we don't pop digital dreams, we prevent your digital nightmares. So if you're getting involved with anything like that or with any of the emerging technologies, then give your audit or assurance people a shout as well, because we're here to help you going forward. So last bit then, troll me. There I am, I'm on LinkedIn. Send me a message, drop me a post. What's a better word than cyber? We need to help Fatima out, really. We've got to be absolutely clear to her about what she's got to retrain in, and I think there's a better word than cyber, because I think it's the wrong way forward. It still makes people think of robots and laptops and this, that, and the other. So if we're going to be going forward with the fourth industrial revolution, how are we going to do that? Is it digital? Is it online? I don't know. Drop me a line and let me know. In the meantime, thank you for that, folks. I appreciate I only had 30 minutes for this. I hope we realised today that cybersecurity is for everyone. More than happy to take questions now, or as I said, troll me away on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to get back to you.
Thanks, Darren. That's brilliant. Really appreciate that. Really, really thorough and interesting. I think we were getting some comments on chat about how people have enjoyed that. What I don't have is any questions. So because we're a smaller audience, I'm happy to throw that open for people to unmute themselves and ask Darren anything if you've still got time.
Any ideas on that better word, by the way? Anyone got any immediate ideas? I will credit you.
It's a tricky one. That I think if someone like you can't think of it, I'm not sure we can do that. Oh no, Tilly's suggesting digital.
Do you know what? I think if I was a betting man, that's going to be the top one, really, isn't it? Digital, yeah. Because we're moving everyone forward into the digital environment. It's one of the big focuses now for Festival of the Future. So yeah, perhaps this is what we're talking now: digital security. Also, of course, we know that digital is about people, process, and technology anyway, and I think that's how security should reflect that as well. So yes, I agree.
We've got a question from Miriam. What's the benefit of software then if it doesn't secure our data?
It's that layer that's there. The thing is, it does actually protect your data. The technology does protect it, but for someone who wants to get hold of your data, it protects it too well. That's the thing. So absolutely install the technology that you need to go ahead and protect that. That's your layer. That's your barbed wire. That's your CCTV. That's your banned dogs running around your garden. So absolutely, there's still definitely the need for the technology. And believe you me, please apply that, carry on doing the updates, carry on doing the patches. They are your first line of defense, absolutely. But the thing is, for the cyber criminal is they know that they're pretty impenetrable. So therefore, if they want to get their hands on your data, then they're going to use these other psychological methods. They're going to use the weakest link. For them, the technology isn't that weakest link. It's just too good.
Very good point. Does anyone else have anything for Darren while we have him? I realise we've run a little bit over, so understand if if people have to leave. Still 5 of us left. It looks like that might be it, unless anyone's trying to unmute, but I don't see it. Oh, I hear someone unmuting. No, I don't. Okay, I think maybe we should just all thank Darren for a really informative and useful presentation. I've certainly learned lots, including that Darren doesn't work for Microsoft, and huge apologies for that. I've been running a bit back to back and my spreadsheet got a bit confused. So I've been put straight by my colleagues too. So brilliant. So thanks very much, everyone. And
thanks everyone. And Yeah, just be careful out there, yeah?
Good advice.